Once Upon a New Year's Eve. By Melinda Curtis. Chapter 1. Christmas was over. Not that it had come and gone with much fanfare at Amelia Lawson's house. Her mother would most likely have had a heart attack to learn she'd made tuna casserole instead of turkey, and pancakes instead of pumpkin pie. Cards? Not a one. And gifts? She'd sent out electronic gift cards rather than wrapped presents. Amelia's one concession to the holiday was a 2-foot-tall live Christmas tree she'd bought at the grocery store. It had come with a shiny red and green garland. Having grown up in a household that kept Christmas decorations up year-round, she'd felt guilty that it lacked a star. But not guilty enough to do anything about it. Ho ho ho. Amelia steeped her tea in her quiet cabin at the base of the quiet mountains on the quiet edge of Christmastown, Maine. It was the day after Christmas and she had plenty of time before she had to be at work at her veterinarian clinic, which was practically in her backyard. Ho ho ho. That sounded like Santa? Amelia dropped her tea bag in her mug. Had her mother and sister finally come to visit? Doubtful. They were probably prowling the day after Christmas sales for more holiday bling. Besides, they hadn't talked to her in more than 3 years. Ho ho ho. Was it a parade? Doubtful. Christmastown was known for its holiday celebrations, but who staged a parade on a 2-lane highway that passed by a veterinary office and ended at a ski resort? But out on her deck there arose such a clatter, she had to look up to see what was the matter. Shades of Christmas poems. Amelia grimaced. If polar bears lived in Maine and slid wildly across icy decks in real-time slow-mo, she might have been worried. Being a vet and knowing polar bears weren't indigenous to Maine, she recognized the beast that lost its footing and slammed into her French doors for what it was, a large white Saint Bernard. The dog righted itself and pressed its black, baseball-sized nose to a pane of glass next to the door handle. An icicle of drool hung from its muzzle. Ho ho ho, he barked and then gave her a panting grin. Grabbing a dish towel, Amelia hurried across her small living room to her front door. Are you okay, big guy? The dog blew into the house along with a blast of frigid air. Both hit her square in the chest. It was the dog who knocked her to the hardwood. Thank you, thank you, thank you, he seemed to be saying as his spatula-sized tongue licked her face cleaner than a wet wipe on rib-stained fingers. And then he used her as a springboard to bound toward the fireplace. Shivering, her exuberant guest sat on the hearth where the remnants of last night's fire were just dying down. Drool-drenched, she was slower getting up. You caught me by surprise. Slower closing the door. Let's make a deal. Slow in her t-shirt and blue jeans to feel warm again. I dry you off and you won't tackle me. He gave a full-body, ear-flapping shake that didn't dislodge the drool cycle. I'll take that for a yes. He allowed Amelia to gently wipe at his mouth, removing fringes of ice and the icicle made of slobber. She cleaned the frost off his face next and then brushed the snow off his back. His body was pure white, rare for a Saint Bernard, and his fur thick enough she could fist her hands in it. His head was more true to the breed with a brown and black mask. While she rubbed him down, he wiggled his torso against her legs and occasionally wiped his drool on her jeans. Cocoa cold, he grumbled. You're a talker. Some dogs were, vocalizing every emotion rather than choosing to express themselves with their eyes. Amelia's father had been a vet and her hero. She'd been talking to animals since she'd uttered her first word, dog. Let's get you a blanket. She tossed her dish towel over her shoulder and then took the pink fuzzy throw with cats printed on it from the back of her brown couch. The dog eyed it warily and grumbled something that sounded like, cats? Cold dogs can't be choosy dogs. Again, he allowed Amelia to rub him down. When she was done, she folded the blanket, damp side together, and laid it on the floor near the fire. She'd noted he wore a blue collar and tag during her pat-down. The tag proclaimed him to be Snowflake. She didn't recognize the area code of the phone number beneath his name. Snowflake. What a fitting name. I bet someone's looking for you. She met his warm, friendly gaze and was struck with the thought that if lost, few people would try to find Amelia. She stared at her pathetic little tree. If only adding a star would illuminate what was missing in her life. Nothing like an animal to make you realize there's an empty space inside you. This was the day for deck clattering, but this time the sound was more the boom 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 of Santa's boots on a rooftop than Snowflake's willy-nilly slide into home plate. A man appeared at her door. Tall, dark knit cap pulled low, yellow reflective sunglasses, a nose that looked as if it might have been broken, broad shoulders beneath a worn blue coat. He looked like one of the men from the ski patrol at the resort up the road. Athletic, authoritative. He removed his sunglasses. Angry. In her nice warm cabin behind her unlocked French doors, Amelia trembled like a startled chihuahua. If she didn't move, maybe he wouldn't see her. If she didn't move, maybe he'd go away. Unless, of course, the dog gave her away. The dog gave her away. Snowflake barked and ran to the door, looking over his shoulder when she didn't immediately follow, a string of drool where the icicle used to be. Okay. She forced her stocking feet to the door. But only because you're vouching for him. She opened the door and backed away, ready to sound a blustery warning like a startled chihuahua if letting him in turned out to be a bad idea. Snowflake pranced outside and herded the man in with a grumbly growl that sounded like, "About time." Unbelievable. The man's voice rang to the rafters. He was big and loud and unapologetic. I must have run a mile. Downhill. In snow boots. That is not how I pictured my morning. Unconcerned with the man's outburst, Snowflake trotted happily to the fireplace, where he dragged his paws across the cat blanket to rearrange it to his satisfaction, circled and then dropped on top of it. That dog has the right idea. The man tugged off his boots and set them next to the door. When did my job become so cold and thankless? It was the kind of question that required no answer. For a moment there was quiet. Only this quiet wasn't the serene quiet Amelia was used to. It was the unsettling quiet of the unknown. There was a shoeless stranger in her house. She folded and refolded the dish towel. She wanted him out. But he was, and she was. At some point in every quaking chihuahua's life, they had to step up and act like a Rottweiler. Amelia stepped forward and said, Her bootless guest ignored her and padded over to the fireplace in his thick wool socks. He unzipped his jacket, stuffed his gloves in his pockets and slipped the jacket off, draping it over her fire pokers. His hair was dark, crisply cut, but beanie mussed. Oh. Yeah. That's more like it. His anger was deflating like an inflatable snow globe at daylight. But nothing about his presence deflated. He had sturdy shoulders and steady brown eyes. He had the rigid posture and wide stance of a commander-in-chief. You couldn't knock him down and expect him not to get back up. Didn't catch your name. Not a question. An order. Ah, Amelia. The man was so at home in her home, she felt off balance, like the time she'd tried ice skating and discovered her ankles wouldn't hold. Amelia Lawson. Ah, the vet. He dug in his back pocket for his wallet, removed a card and held it out to her. Gavin Elliott. Boxes and bows, interior design and decoration and light displays. I was going to offer to take down your Christmas decorations in exchange for a cup of hot coffee or something, but, he glanced around. Ah. You're that Dr. Lawson. He recognized her name. Amelia snapped his card on the kitchen counter like a Rottweiler snaps at an unwelcome intruder. His glance landing on her. It was a pitying glance, one that found the weak spot in her armor and pressed on a patient's severing nerve. He cleared his throat. You're the one they call Dr. Scrooge, she finished briskly in her mother's scolding voice. She'd earned the moniker when she'd moved to Christmas Town 3 years ago. She was one of the few businesses in the area that didn't decorate for the holiday and their well-meaning Santa shaming had boomeranged. It wasn't entirely the town's fault. How were they to know her faith in peace on earth and goodwill to man had been shattered by her own Mama Claus? If you ever want to change your image, Gavin was saying. Boxes and bows helps the busy and holiday overwhelmed bring the magic of Christmas to life. There is no magic in Christmas. It was all store-bought. She rescued the tea bag and handed him her mug. Here. Hot tea. Never let it be said that Dr. Scrooge wasn't full of Christmas Town hospitality. Snowflake groaned and put his big head on his front paws, watching them the way a spectator watched a tennis match. Gavin drank her tea, studying Amelia over the top of the mug. Wondering, no doubt. Everyone wondered why she rejected the outward displays of Christmas. She'd only told one person. Her vet tech Francis. Who'd be expecting her at the clinic any minute. Amelia sighed and gestured to Snowflake. Is he yours? Snowflake grumbled deep and low in his throat and closed his eyes. The dog? No. Gavin gave her a softly crooked smile, which did softly crooked things to her insides. Interruption and annoyance aside, he was attractive. Too bad he knew it. If he's not your dog, why are you here? She blurted. He pretended not to hear her question. Won't take me long to box up your holiday decorations. My tree garland? She leaned on the kitchen counter, crumbling the dish towel in her hand. I think I can handle it. Then my job here is done. He nudged Snowflake's torso with his toe. Let's move, Snowball. Snowflake opened one eye and growled. Amelia's protective instincts surged to life, along with her backbone. She wasn't letting this man take that dog anywhere. His name is Snowflake. I thought he wasn't yours. He's not. I'm dog sitting for my friend Darren. He's a Navy SEAL doing training exercises at the Coast Guard base in Cape Cod the next couple of weeks. He brought me Snow Bucket yesterday as a Christmas present. Gavin leaned down and beat Snowflake's chest like a drum. You'd think a dog with his thick coat would be able to weather this cold. He's been in San Diego too long. He's a total weather wimp. Did she believe Gavin's story? Snowflake was thumping his tail and emitting that breathy, growly grumble that was his happy voice. Snowflake will adjust. Animals adapted better than humans to a change in environment. He doesn't want to adjust. I'm going to have to buy him a sweater. Maybe a pink one with bows on it. It was the good-natured ribbing of one male to another. Snowflake rubbed a massive paw over his face, and then glowered at Gavin like a child who'd been served liver. Amelia sucked back a smile. Their interactions convinced her Snowflake was indeed in Gavin's care. I don't think they make dog sweaters in Snowflake's size, although he might fit in your jacket. Good luck putting that on him. Not an option. Gavin's brows lowered. He shared my bed last night, despite my protests. He's not taking my coat, too. He passed Amelia on the way to the sink with the self-assured steps of a take-charge man, the kind of man who needed a little woman to clean up after him. And yet, he rinsed the mug. Thanks for warming us up. We've got to get back to the ski resort. I'm building a snow castle and setting up lights for the New Year's Eve show. I don't recommend pets going outside in this weather. The wind whipping down Blue Spruce Mountain could be brutal, and the snow, although gentle and sporadic today, would seep into coats, be they fur or polyester. And I wouldn't think you should be working outside either. The show must go on. Gavin flashed his lopsided smile and began putting his protective layers back on. Come on, Snowburn. Back to work. Snowflake rolled over. He might have snored. Snowburn. Gavin nudged him with his toe again. Don't make me find your tickle spot. Snowflake curled into a tight ball, his back to Gavin. Amelia laughed. He doesn't want to go. Gavin's scowl was half-hearted. Clearly, he had a soft spot for the dog. You know, Amelia couldn't believe she was doing this. Snowflake can stay with me. His dark eyebrows shot up to the universal surprise position, and he took a moment to study her face as if he couldn't believe she'd made the offer. Stay here. Well, at the clinic. Francis was going to kill her. As long as he gets along with other animals. Snowshoes loves animals of all shapes and sizes. Gavin hurried to the door, possibly worried she'd change her mind. In all fairness, I should warn you. He'll be a pain. Snowflake gave Gavin a sideways look. He'll be no trouble, Amelia reassured them both. He'll be a pain. Gavin mashed his knit cap on his head. Don't kid yourself. He drools. He's nosy. And he talks all the time. Snowflake grumbled something that sounded like, not all the time. Gavin moved to the door and his boots. Call me if you need me to come get him. He put his hand on the doorknob and glanced at her over his shoulder, a wickedly charming grin on his face that illuminated an empty space in her heart. Or if you change your mind about wanting help with that garland.